everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. My name's Dr. Dan. It's so good that you could join with us again today, and we've got people in the live chat already, all the usuals: Matt, Yuhui, Linda, Moa Power for Owls. It's good to have you all joining us, and we have got an exciting, I used the word spectacular earlier today when I let everyone know in the community tab on YouTube here and on my Facebook page, because seriously, today's guest, in my humble opinion, is spectacular. He's someone that I think is just forging a new path in our understanding when it comes to voice registration and acoustic registers. What are acoustic registers? Well, lucky you, and lucky me, to be honest, we are going to find out when we have Ken Bosan join us in just a moment. And he is an absolute gentleman, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a moment. Before we get in and dive into today's topic, and you're going to have to really keep your skates on today, because we're going to be really deep diving into some really key understandings about the voice. And you're going to have to pay really close attention. So make sure you grab your favorite beverage. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, I know many of you are in the States, and and for Ken it's 11 p.m. on Sunday night, and I know for many of you it's quite late also. So maybe grab a hot chocolate. Actually, would a hot chocolate be a good idea? I'm not sure. It might send you to sleep. You want something that's going to keep you nice and alert. If you're here in Australia or in the Southern Hemisphere, then maybe something a little bit harder, like a double shot flat white coffee, if you will. Maybe that'll do the trick, because you're going to have to really pay attention today. All of our guests that come onto the channel bring something wonderful, but Ken is going to bring something really interesting that we're going to have to think. It's not going to be a lazy watch. You're going to have to really engage. Hey, just a quick update on Voice Essentials 2. As you can see down the bottom there, I can never get this right there. You can see the first exercise CD being displayed. And many of you know we are producing Voice Essentials 2. We were in the studio last Monday, which is why we couldn't do a live hangout, because I had to go into studio and do some tracking with Renee, who's the female vocal that's on CD1 and will be on CD2. So we've got 17 new tracks, 17 new exercises that we've been designing for you guys, and that's going to be. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to launch that, release it for you guys to get a copy in the first week of September. I'm hoping it could blow out. I hope not. We've already sort of blown out by a couple of months due to unforeseen circumstances, but nonetheless, it is coming. Everyone, it is coming. So hold on to your hats, and you'll get your copy as soon as I can possibly get it to you. And also, just to let you know, we are now back in a weekly schedule for the live hangout. I know we've had a funny sort of erratic schedule, but we'll be back here again next week. Hey, next week, tune in. It's going to be more of a casual hangout. I want to show you some photos from my recent holiday down to Sydney, and many of you know I'm a bit of a keen amateur photographer. I don't know. Keen doesn't mean, that's not a statement of quality. It's just to say I really enjoy doing photography. And I thought I'd show you some of the photos that I took while I was down there and got around. And we went to a place called Taronga Zoo, which is probably Australia's most famous zoo. And anyway, I'll show you some of those shots next week. Without further ado, let's get into today's show. Ken Bosan is really on the cutting edge, in my humble opinion, in the area of developing and educating this idea of vocal acoustics. Now, just as a word of entry or intro, my educational, my pedagogy instruction and learning back in the 90s was very much a physiological pedagogy. We learnt to teach voice with an understanding of physiology. And much of what we talk about here on the channel is talking about the voice from a physiological point of view. And that is of high value for us to understand how the voice works physically. But there's a new understanding around registration and vocal tract resonance, and that can I tell you, I am an absolute baby in. And I've got a couple of Ken's books here, as you can see. I get them right there. This one here is the first, Practical Vocal Acoustics. And as you can see, I've been, I've literally got notes all the way through this book, and I'm yet to start on this one. I haven't got to this one yet, because this one, even though it's only a couple of 100 pages thick, it is dense. My head hurts when I read it. So I was really excited when Ken said he would be more than happy to come onto the show and kind of give us it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. I hope that's not offensive. That's an Australian colloquially, you know what I mean. Australian vernacular for straight from the person who understands it. He's going to share with us his knowledge around vocal acoustics. I hope you'll stick around, because this is the show you cannot miss this year. I hope you'll settle in for a really exciting show. I'm just getting ourselves ready for the stinger, and here it comes. We'll be right back after this.
Sound check. Check 1, check 2.
Hi Ken, how you doing?
I'm good.
It's so good to have you on the show. I'm so fanboying right now, and I really am. For those I've mentioned you and your books multiple times on the channel, and last year we did a video about formants and harmonics, which you were kind enough to review the script for and help me tweak it before I recorded. So your name is not an unknown one here on Voice Essentials, but it's so good to have you with us in person here on the channel for the first time.
Excited to be here.
And it's quite late there.
It is.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. I've lived here and taught at Lawrence University for 41 years. This is a small liberal arts college with a conservatory of music, and a very strong, large conservatory relative to the size of the college.
Okay.
We have about 350 music majors and about 100 voice majors.
Excellent. I'm just trying to get my levels right so I'm not overpowering you. My apologies for that. Let's see if I can just up your levels here. And so you've been teaching, how long have you been teaching at Lawrence?
41 years.
Yeah, right. So I think we just lost you there. Sorry. How many years was that?
41.
41.
Right.
I am a baby. That is a truckload of experience and expertise right there. 41 years.
Yes.
That is almost double my teaching career. Had you been teaching prior to that?
A little bit informally as a teaching assistant in graduate programs and so forth, but so I've probably been teaching about 43 years total.
Yeah. And you sang, you had a career of singing and what have you in the past?
Right. I went straight in, well, once I was done with my preparation, I did go straight into academia teaching, but I sang from that venue for about 25 years and had some health issues and a little prematurely. They were genetically based apparently. And so I stopped performing publicly a while back, but yeah, I enjoyed performing a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And just for the record, for your audience, both my performing and my teaching has been essentially in what we would call Western classical tradition styles. I enjoy lots of styles of music, and I've taught, I have some musical theater students who will come in and work on some other styles, but I'm primarily, I would have to say that my expertise and experience is primarily in the classical area. But we all inhabit the same acoustic landscape. We just live in it a little differently.
Yeah, and I think that, thank you for qualifying that, because this, many, not all, but many of the subscribers to the Voice Essentials channel and people who'll be watching this video are coming at it from the contemporary, or what is loosely referred to as CCM. So that's a worthwhile caveat, sort of to have understanding your background. But you're teaching most voice types in your program over there?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And whereabouts, just for me as an Aussie, whereabouts is Wisconsin in the USA?
Do you know where the Great Lakes are in the sort of north central part of this?
I think I do, yes.
They're sort of border between Canada and the United States.
Okay.
In the middle. Then Lake Michigan is a long one that sort of hangs down, and Wisconsin is just to the west of Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
It's north of Chicago, if you know where Chicago is.
I don't, but but I can look it up later.
All right.
Yes, you'll have to forgive my Southern Hemisphere ignorance.
All right.
So we want to talk about, with 42 years of teaching experience, there is a wealth of knowledge you can talk to us about today. But I'm really excited to talk about your passion. And we've met before. It was such a great joy for me to meet you in person last year in Stockholm.
Wow.
When we were both there for ICVT, and I think we shared a vino, didn't we, together in the City Hall?
Right.
Yeah, beautiful building that it is, and then I think we had a couple of breakfasts together, which was fantastic. But your breadth and depth of knowledge around registration and vocal resonance is quite something. And so I really want to, along with everyone else watching, I want to sit at the feet of the master today. I want you, if you're able to take us through what are acoustic registers, and how do they operate, and how do they sound, and what should they feel like, and yeah, let's dive in.
Good. Well, for many years, we voice teachers assumed and thought that registers were purely laryngeal events. And of course, there are major laryngeal events going on. And, we talk about them now more often in terms of mode 1, mode 2, or the primary registers that were historically called chest and head. And by the way, I still use those historic terms to some extent. I'm comfortable. I want us to be able to relate to what's come before us and then just carry forward with it. But it was rather revelatory to me once I began to learn about the acoustics that there are shifts of the voice that occur from acoustic reasons that mimic laryngeal registers. They sound like a register change, and it may have very little to do with the laryngeal change other than pitch change. And so these acoustic registers, I think, may have confused the issue in the past, where we thought something was laryngeal and in fact was acoustic interactions. So they're laryngeal registers and there are acoustic registers. And I know you've had this presentation in the past, but just a quick sort of overview. The vocal folds produce a set of harmonics, and that's just a raw buzzing set of frequencies, a harmonic series. And it's really, if you could hear that unresonated, it's fairly uninteresting. It sounds about like this duck call, creates a set of harmonics. That set of harmonics is then fed into our vocal tract, this is about the length of a baritone vocal tract, to resonate those harmonics to create a tone. Then it begins to take on some sort of tonal quality. In the case of voice, we can shape our resonator by making narrowings along that tube, and those narrowings then selectively resonate the harmonics that we're putting into them to create vowels and our tone and everything. So you can do vowels by making different narrowings in this tubing. So that's the basic material that we're dealing with. Now this resonator, this tube that is closed at one end, at the glottal end, and open at the mouth end, has natural resonances that much literature refers to as formants. That's a little bit of a useful fiction. They're actually resonances of the tube, and the peaks of the sound that come out to us are the formants, but we'll just keep with that since that's very familiar to people. So there are these resonances. The lowest one of those resonances, often called the first formant, is the lowest frequency that this tube really gets excited about when you put that frequency in, and it vibrates with it, would be this. Can you hear that pitch okay? That's roughly equivalent to that in my vocal tract if I make a somewhat similar shape. Okay.
Yeah, fabulous.
So we put in a set of harmonics from our vocal folds. The resonator selectively resonates some of those harmonics and suppresses other ones, and then we get the sound out the other end that we hear as the tone with its vowel and all of its characteristics. Acoustic registers are essentially determined by that lowest resonance and where my harmonics are relative to that lowest resonance. So if I use my hand here as that lowest resonance, that's the pitch of that resonance, and I use this hand to sort of illustrate my harmonic set, my pointer, my index finger would be the pitch I'm singing, or the fundamental frequency, and these other fingers would be the harmonics above that. So the second harmonic, my middle finger, is an octave above the pitch I'm singing. My third harmonic, my ring finger, would be an octave and a fifth above the pitch that I'm singing. And my pinky would be 2 octaves above. If you know the harmonic series, you know fundamental, octave, octave and a fifth, 2 octaves. Where my pitch is relative to that lowest resonance and where those harmonics are interacting with it determine the acoustic registers. Let me start with maybe the simplest one. That's when I'm singing the same pitch as that lowest resonance. So I'm matching that pitch. This is what treble voices or high voices do a lot of. I've called that whooping. Donald Miller, who is quite an expert in all of these acoustics and has written some wonderful books as well, he calls it hoot timbre. It's what humans do at sporting events. They have kind of 2 options if they want to make a lot of noise. They either yell or they whoop. At least in my world of English language, that's what we call it, whooping. It's a woo, woo, woo. And it's usually done in what you might refer to as a head tone or a falsetto tone that's very reinforced and strong. But basically, you are matching the pitch that you're singing with that first resonance, and then you're making that resonance move up and down with the pitch to keep track, because you want that resonance peak to be resonating that pitch that you're singing, that lowest pitch. So that's whoop register or whoop timbre. If you're singing anywhere within an octave below that first resonance, if here's my first resonance again, anytime I'm within an octave of it, that means I'm singing a pitch with only 1 harmonic below that first resonance because there's an octave between my first two harmonics. That's called close timbre. That whole octave there is an octave of close timbre. If I get two harmonics at or below that first resonance, I'm now in open timbre. And from there on down, it's all open timbre. If I have four harmonics below, three harmonics below, two harmonics below, that's all open timbre. So to describe that open timbre a little bit, that's mostly where non-countertenor male voices sing. They sing in open timbre and they sing in close timbre, and only rarely go into whoop timbre unless they're doing a particular high treble pop voice thing. For example, if you know who Frankie Valli was, or the Beach Boys, where they would sing in a very bright, high kind of falsetto tone, that was whoop timbre. They were singing in whoop timbre a good bit of the time, but most male sound is in open timbre or close timbre, whereas most treble voice sound is in close timbre or whoop timbre. And here's why. If you were to put up on the screen the chart of first formant locations of voice types, I think it was the very first chart on the top of my website, Pedagogic resource website. It's got first formant locations for 4 or 5, 4 different, there you go. You will notice that those boxes with vowel symbols in them, if you happen to know the International Phonetic Alphabet, there are vowel symbols in those boxes on the treble clef, yes. And those are E, A, E, A, O, U. Notice even for all voice types, they are in contact with the treble clef. That's because all of our first formants lie within the treble clef. If I were to show you that so that's that E, A, A, O, U first formant. So people that sing rather below that, which would be, most males, if they're not countertenors, or unless they're singing a really high treble falsetto sound, we sing rather below that. So we don't get, you have to sing those vowels on those pitches to be in whoop timbre. If I were and I can sing an E and an U in whoop timbre because I can sing as high as those E and U symbols there. The E and the U are near the bottom of the treble clef for all voice types. A little bit higher for sopranos, a little bit lower for tenors and baritones and basses. But the men can whoop E and U pretty regularly and do. But the other ones get a little bit high for a good bit of our range. So we don't go into whoop timbre very often except for E and U vowels. However, treble voices, female voices, or countertenors sing above all of those boxes at some points in their range. So they sing in whoop timbre a high percentage of the time. So that's basically sort of a quick pass at what acoustic registers are. Now, what does whoop timbre sound like? It sounds full and round and smooth and heady, like a soprano's head voice or a well-developed falsetto in a male, which would be like a countertenor range. I use the term falsetto to refer to mode 2. Some people use it for a breathy form of mode 2, but if you get good closure in the back, then you have a strong form of mode 2, which is, some people refer to head voice, some people call it a falsetto or a reinforced falsetto. It's the like, ooh, that sort of a quality. It's round and full, and it's fairly high, fairly smooth in timbre. Close timbre, which is the one below whoop timbre, can be done in. You can have, in other words, you can have various laryngeal registers at the same time that you have an acoustic register. In general, whoop timbre tends to be done in laryngeal register mode 2, but doesn't have to be, but it tends to be. Close timbre could be done in mode 1 or mode 2. In male voices, closed timbre is typically, because male, like classical singers, tend to stay in mode 1, some version of mode 1 all the way up.
Yeah.
But closed timbre is a very collected, intense timbre where it feels like the acoustic sensation is very concentrated, particularly for classical singers. It's a little bit more internalized than open timbre. Open timbre is very much like sort of a speech mode of a male voice. It's very buzzy. It tends to vibrate on the hard palate and seems like it's just coming right out the mouth. Yai, yai would be open timbre. Yai, yay, yai. If I were in closed timbre, right. If I'm in closed timbre, I'll do the best I can with the voice I have left these days. A closed timbre on, say an O. Well, we'll do. What can I dare to do? An E vowel closes very low, by the way, because an E first form is very low. So here, I'll show you an E, which is an open. E. You might hear a little difference in the quality. Yeah. E.
Yeah.
When that harmonic rises above that first resonance, the vowel closes. It gets a little bit more domey, a little bit more internal.
Yeah.
It's a little bit less straight out your mouth.
Right.
That have very low on an E vowel.
So in the past, we may have thought of that as simply the placement changing in a sense, wouldn't we?
Right.
Right.
So you can be, and by the way, because those first formants of vowels vary by vowel, where acoustic registers occur varies by vowel. So, for example, my E vowel is turning over there, but my A first formant is an octave higher than my E first formant. So I've got a lot of range in open timbre on an A vowel before I get to a closed vowel on an A. My E turns over near the F below middle C, or E or F below middle C, even lower sometimes. My A turns over about F4 above middle C, FF sharp 4.
Mm-hmm. And
so,
is this going to be different for every individual, given that every morphology is different, or are you able to, as what I'm thinking you can do, is you're grouping this? We see this as a grouping around fachs.
Right. And it really, the curious thing is though ranges vary quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like a color soprano is, a couple of octaves higher than a deep bass, for example. But our resonances, our vocal tract resonances don't vary nearly as much. In fact, for most people, most males are high baritones or second tenors. Most females are sort of second sopranos. There's only about maybe a minor third difference between their formats.
Can I get you to say that again? Because I think you just said something I've been saying for 2 decades and at times have come under fire for. Can you just say what you just said again, please?
Genetically, most males are high baritones or low tenors. And then, of course, there are real high tenors and real low basses. But most of us, are sort of in the middle. Same thing with female voices. Most female voices are sort of second sopranos. There are higher sopranos and there are deeper female voices as well. But the sort of on average, most are there. The resonances, the difference between those resonances of those two voice types, and it's largely tube length dependent.
Yes.
That's the main factor. Why? Rather than vocal folds tell you what your vibrator can do, but your resonator determines where those resonances are. And it's not even so much the width of the tubing, it's the length, because sound waves travel, longitudinally. So the difference between second soprano's resonances and a baritone's resonances is not that far. whole step to a minor third. So your lowest bass and your highest soprano their resonances might be as far as a fifth apart. But for the most part, a typical bass formants would go from D to D, and a typical soprano's formants might go from F sharp to F sharp or G to G. But most are going to lie closer together. So within a given voice type, from one tenor to another tenor, there may be a half step apart. They're not hugely different. I don't prescribe them and say, okay, your formants are always going to be here. I listen to the student in front of me and we figure out where they sit approximately. But there's not a lot of difference between voice types.
Do you then allow that to inform? I'll back up in my question. Historically, the way we would identify a voice type would be to listen to the general timbre, to observe highest note, lowest note, prima voce, seconda voce, where's the voice sitting. Are you now, are you using the facility of register acoustics to inform the application of Fach to a voice?
Yes. Is everybody familiar with the term Fach, just this voice category? It's a German word for voice category.
Yep.
I do. You can have a mismatch between laryngeal comfort and tube resonance. So it's possible that you could have someone with a bass range laryngally and a baritone timbre. That does happen. But in general, there's a more or less a match. So where those acoustic events occur tells me a lot about their tube length, but it also informs the sort of general depth of the timbre. So for example, I can show you some of this. Let me see if I have those other tubes handy. Hold on just a moment.
And just while you're doing that, Ken, I'll just let everyone know I apologise for the small echo you were getting earlier. I think it was at my end, actually. I had to turn a speaker off because I think you might have just been getting a small delay by Ken, but it's all fixed now, I believe. So that's a good thing. So back over to you, Ken.
So here's the baritone length. That's its length. Here's a slightly shorter length tube, which would be maybe like some treble voice. And here's a child's tube length. Very short. So you can tell that the tube length hugely affects the quality of the sound. If I went back to my baritone tube and lengthen it with my hand, so those tube lengths have a lot to do with the way we perceive the quality of the voice, and it's probably the most dominant factor in voice category. Of course, the laryngeal function and the range that the larynx is comfortable executing is a factor as well. And to some extent, the robustness of the vocal folds will affect things like the pressure level that the voice is comfortable managing, which could indicate if it's a more dramatic weight voice or a lighter lyric voice, those sorts of things. But the tube length is pretty huge.
This is probably the exciting thing for me because in my updating of my knowledge that's a radical addition to our understanding, isn't it? I mean, it's to apply the idea that the primary effect of voice type is tube length, when for many years my understanding was that that we looked at vocal fold, histology and the length of the vocal folds, the width and the breadth of the vocal fold, depth, those sorts of things was what we would have historically used to define vocal, but now this is wonderful stuff.
So for example, I'm using the same, larynx
Yes.
and the pitch, actually, in this
Yes.
case, here,
Yeah.
it changes the pitch of the resonance in a sense so strongly the larynx is still a factor, but the tube length is pretty dominant in
Yeah.
that.
Which is why the position of the larynx is
Right.
so important, and also the position of the lips. I would think, because they're both the points at which we can lengthen and shorten vocal tract length.
So for classical, we want nothing should be rigid, but we want a relatively stable tube length because we want our voice to sound like the same voice type, top to bottom.
Yeah.
Some genres don't. That's not an aesthetic of importance. They want good function, but they don't mind having a rather brighter top and a rather darker bottom, or what
Yeah.
or lower pitch. So some genres don't mind quite a variety of laryngeal tube lengths.
Yeah. Well,
Because
in belt, for example, if we were doing pop or some modes of rock, we would expect a heightening of the larynx, in keeping with the tonalities around belt. Maybe that's an opportunity if you just very briefly talk about belt, perhaps.
so when you change the tube length, you move all of those vowel formants, all of the formants, and the vowel formants higher. So your acoustic register events then will be delayed to higher in the range.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do for belt and styles that want to extend a speech-like quality, well, we speak, in sort of middle-low voice. And if we want that middle-low voice quality to be extended, it has to do with the acoustic register as well. So we don't want necessarily to transition into the next higher acoustic register because it won't sound so speech-like. So the way to delay or postpone that acoustic register is by moving those acoustic registers higher by shortening the tube a bit. All right. And of course, there are ramifications. There are some things that are a little harder to execute with the shorter tube. You have to figure out how to not increase the subglottic pressure too much. It's more, the higher the larynx is, the easier it is to increase glottal resistance to the point of potential injury. A low larynx inhibits glottal closure force. A high larynx facilitates glottal closure force.
So
it's easier to press with a high larynx than with a low larynx.
So I wonder whether we could just quickly talk about then the elephant in the room, and that is we're talking about the length of the vocal tract. What about the width of the vocal tract? What influence is that then having upon the sound?
Well, we're still learning things about that. Generally, I have thought, and things are not always what they seem. And so we will continue to learn more and more about this. But in general, I argue for a relatively open throat and settled larynx for classical timbre throughout the range, except for extremely high treble voice pitch. When you get into stratospheric pitches and treble voices, coloratura about high B and high C on up, the tube does shorten somewhat. But most classical singers will have a relatively stable tube length and a relatively open laryngopharynx around the epilarynx to maintain timbral depth. When you narrow the pharynx, that raises the first formant.
Okay.
There are several things that raise the first formant. Opening the mouth more raises the first formant, and narrowing the pharynx raises the first formant. Shortening the tube raises all of the formants.
Right.
If I want to retain depth of timbre, as in classical E, or a ya, I don't want to do ya. There I'm raising the narrowing the pharynx, raising the larynx, and widening the mouth, which I would do in some popular genres. Because I want that brighter, more speech-like towards, not everybody's happy with me using this analogy, but I would say it's a similar strategy to yelling. And yelling is this. By the way, the acoustics of the situation cause tendencies. There are innate tendencies that we humans have because of the acoustics. We like to track harmonics that are rising with the pitch with that first resonance.
Yeah.
So for example, when the second harmonic gets in the first resonance, as I'm going up on a vowel, we like that. It's a strong sound and we track it higher. And that's exactly what yelling is. We're tracking the second harmonic and how do we do that? Well, how do we raise that first resonance, which is this hand? How do we raise it? Possibly by raising the larynx, possibly by narrowing the pharynx, and definitely by opening the mouth. So we do it by opening the vowel more and creating a more divergent tube shape, and possibly by shortening the tube as well.
And
I'll
this
illustrate that
Yeah.
with you. Say I'll take an A vowel, okay, which is a mid-level formant vowel. E is the low formant, A is mid-level, A is the highest first formant. So for the A, I'm going to open that vowel towards an E. I did that without raising my larynx, which you saw me open my mouth more. I don't think I narrowed my pharynx. I did that mostly just by opening my mouth more and letting the tongue dorsum settle a little lower. Both of those will raise that formant. Now I'm going to raise it by raising my larynx as well. You will see that really raises it much more strongly. And you also could hear the difference in the overall timbre of my voice with that raised larynx. That's what we do when we yell. Now, some popular styles take advantage of that yell approach, but they do it skillfully and hopefully in a way that is comfortable for the laryngeal function. And they don't go quite as far as probably as I did with what I just showed you. And I don't find that it pejorative to say that, because when do we yell? We yell in moments of high drama, high emotion, high intensity. Why would we not want to imitate that and take advantage of that emotional association in our aesthetics? It's just that we want to do it in a way. If you do a raw yell, well, you can make yourself hoarse. But we learn to do it in a way that's sustainable and healthy by keeping the pressure. All you have to do is keep the breath pressure levels low enough and the glottal closure force low enough that you don't injure the tissues. You can imitate the acoustic with lower forces and a microphone and do it, and sustain that sound. It's not a classical approach, but it is a very natural, natural thing to do. We're hardwired to do that. We're hardwired to yell from birth. We know how to do that.
And I've just put up the advertisement of your book. I've put an affiliate link, everyone, into the book, and the reason I've jumped in here because that's actually the exact topic I'm up to in the book is chapter 11, the acoustics of belting. So it's kind of good to hear your explanation as you're going into that there.
I would actually encourage you to. That was my first pass at that topic because people wanted me to address it, even though I'm not a belt specialist. My second book updates that topic quite a bit. There's a chapter late in the second book on belting that made some adjustments to what I said in the first book on belting.
Oh, okay.
But the general acoustic principles for the voice, the vocal landscape, are in the first book, and the second book goes a little further into application. But I did update my comments on in the second book.
Yeah, both, and everyone, seriously, if this is a topic that is of interest to you, I know it's a challenging topic to get your head around, that I encourage you to get a hold of both books. I've only got the affiliate link to one of them, the first book, which is, I think, a good place to start, and then travel the journey with Ken as he goes into the second book as well. So what do you think is the natural then implications of this? How does this impact your teaching? These understandings.
Well, of course, what we can do in a short interview is just complete interest and get people to think about it a little bit. I would say this, that everything migrates. Almost everything migrates when you sing across your range. What do I mean by migrates? The vowel migrates, the quality of the vowel migrates. It is actually literally impossible to keep a vowel exactly the same across range. And if we have time, I can get into some of the specifics of why that's the case. We do a pretty good job of fooling people that we're keeping the vowel the same, but it isn't exactly the same timbre. It's impossible to keep it the same. In classical land, what I recommend in classical land is to allow all of the harmonics to pass through that first formant without tracking them. Even though it's instinctive to track harmonics as they rise through and start moving towards a yell. Mm. Instead of doing that, ya, ya. If I track them, I'm going to go ya. If I don't, ya. You'll notice that vowel migrated quite a bit towards this, even though the shape, I kept the shape of an ah the whole time. An ah shape will yield an increasingly like vowel if I don't change the shape. Mm-hmm. So classical land, we do that. Ya. It's a brighter, more ah-like sound low, and it migrates to a different vowel higher. An O, yo, goes towards an O. Mm. I didn't change the shape of my throat or the lips or anything, and it migrates. Also, so not only does the vowel quality migrate as it goes through these acoustic shifts, the sensations migrate. The vibratory sensations or the sensations of the sound migrate. They don't stay the same. Mm. If you try to hold them the same, you run into more difficulty. So in both books, I talk about migration of those sensations. For example, an open timbred sound feels like it's vibrating out the mouth and vibrates along the hard palate quite a bit. As I go higher, I'll turn sideways. I have a chart in one of the books. It's also on that pedagogic resource site. It sort of travels back and up and around and back and down and in, kind of like a, let's see, it depends on which way I'm facing to you. It's either an epsilon or a 3, and I'm not sure how that's coming across. It sort of travels back, up and over, and back, down and under. So, for example, an ah, or e. If I keep it in my mouth and try to hold it there, I will go too far into a yell. E, e, e. The other thing is, once you, there it is, that's the symbol, yes, that's the illustration of how these sensations migrate across range. And this is, nothing is hard and fast because people's perceptions will individualize somewhat, but this is a pretty common perception. I find it works for most people to imagine that a bit. So many things migrate across range, and knowing those migrations can be helpful. Now, I'm going to dive into a new area that is not originally from me, but it's from a very bright colleague that I have, who might be a lovely person to have on your show at some point. Ian Howell at the New England Conservatory, countertenor, is doing wonderful research in psychoacoustics. And psychoacoustics is how the brain processes sound. And he's bringing over information from the discipline of psychoacoustics, some of which other people have done, and he's adding to that himself in very important ways. And it goes like this. Humans perceive light frequencies as colors. Our brain perceives light frequencies as colors. Turns out we perceive sound frequencies as having a vowel-like tone color, and also as being on a darkness to brightness scale. So what this means is, when we hear if we hear an individual frequency, our brain assigns a vowel label to that frequency. We perceive the vowel. So if you hear a siren, depending on the way the siren is programmed, you probably hear something that sounds like wee oo, wee oo, wee oo.
Yeah.
So the high frequencies are E-like, and the low frequencies are oo-like.
Yeah.
And it sweeps through some other vowel colors in between. Well, what that means is our two vowel formants, the two resonances of our vocal tract that primarily determine the vowel, they're resonating harmonics that have vowel-like colors. So one vowel is made of two vowel-like colors that our resonator is choosing to bring out. Well, this is really useful and interesting stuff. But for example, the treble clef, where all of our first formants live that we showed you a moment ago, ooh-like color goes all the way up to C5. Everything from C5 on down, it sounds dark and ooh-like to our brains. The top of the treble clef from about C5 up to about F5 sounds O-like. So the whole treble clef is ooh and O land. So the first format of our vowel, I said in practical vocal acoustics that it's adding a warm depth, roundness and warmth and depth to the tone. Well, this is how it's doing it. It's adding ooh paint and O paint to the color that we hear. All right? Starting just above the treble clef at about G5, you hit aw land. And aw goes up to about almost high C for sopranos. And then above high C, you hit ah land. Okay? Ah tone color. And it goes on up through ah, e. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to hear this or not, and you tell me if you can't, because it may not translate well. I'm going to whisper a few vowels. I'm going to whisper E, A, and see if you can hear the pitch of this. Were you able to hear that from the whisper or not?
Yeah, we could hear that, yes.
That's the pitch of those frequencies. I'm inputting a noise with a whisper.
Yeah.
So an E vowel is made up of a high frequency noise, my second format, and this undervowel quality. The undervowel quality is technically an oo or an O, depending on the vowel, but we don't always hear it as an oo or an O because we don't hear spectrally. We don't hear individual harmonics. We hear things blended together. It's sort of like I've got some blue paint and I've got some yellow paint, and you hear green.
Gotcha.
Because blue and yellow blend together.
Yeah.
So the complementary vowel, you hear the E color in my E, and the complementary color is going to sound something like the capital Y in the IPA, which is the German E, but you don't shape that. It's just built in.
Yeah.
So if I E, it's E and E, E. If I eliminate that undervowel quality, that round warmth, you will get a thin sound that only has the E color in it, or mostly only has that. That's going to be E, E. But if I have E, E, you've got two colors. It's really obvious in an ah, because I can play that one for you. An ah is made up of ah color and O technically, but we don't hear the O as O. We hear the O blended a little bit with the ah, and it sounds like an ah or an O. I'll show you. I'll pronounce an ah, ya, ah. That thump sounds kind of like an ah, right?
Yeah.
If I make it sound like an ah, I will have to raise my larynx. Ah, raised larynx.
Yeah.
Yeah. So an ah is made up of ah and perceptually, possibly an There's several vowels that are similar. So I now teach that a single vowel is made of two vowels. And I'll have my singers try to listen to both components and play with the percentages of those two vowels in the sound.
So it's kind of almost like playing, trying to sing a simultaneous diphthong.
Yeah. In fact, you can do this at the rate of your vibrato. You can try to trill in your imagination between the two vowel colors. So if I'm doing an ah, I can do ah and ah. I'm thinking ah and ah. I'm not doing it with the vibrato. I'm just thinking mentally ah and ah. Ultimately at the rate of my vibrato.
I'll have to play with it.
I can do a grace note thought of one of the vowels into the other one. I can think ah into the ah, or reverse it. Or O is O and O. If I only think the one vowel, I tend to not get as good a resonator position. For example, if I only think the O, I want the
I'm given to thinking that we hear that. I think if I'm hearing it correctly, I think it may be that we hear that quite a bit in contemporary music by singers who are. Whereas in classical, Western classical music, the ideal is to have the singer, and please correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a classical specialist, but you have you want the singer to enter the note exactly. Whereas in contemporary models, we're very happy for them to have little glitches and little nuances on the entrance into vowels and words. And what you've just described is actually the explanation for what we're hearing there. I think we have in the past called those things a grace note, for the want of a better term, but it never really described what was going on. I think you've just Ian's obviously happened upon this with that description.
Yes. Now my description of this undervowel being a mixed vowel is my adaptation of Ian's work.
Yes.
Ian has been doing so much with signals, separating out the components and listening to them, that he actually hears spectrally.
Does he?
So,
yes.
So he hears oo and e at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm convinced from Ian's work that you can train yourself to hear that way, but it helps to have a computer program where you can take the sounds apart and play them singly and put them back together again for your brain to begin to hear them that way. I think for most of us, we hear the complementary part of the vowel as a mixture.
I've got no doubts that we can learn to hear that spectrally because, for example, I know at the Queensland Conservatorium of Music, when I was going through back in the 90s, the sonology students were doing spectral ear training. So they were learning to be able to identify the frequency and their test would be, it freaked me out because I'd think, you know, they'd have to go, because to be able to be working well as a sonologist, you've got to be able to go, actually, I want that, you know, 3,500, pull that out, you know. And so I think you're absolutely right. I think you can be taught, or certainly some people would be able to.
So on my website, there is a chart of what I call the overvowel and the undervowel. The overvowel would be that vowel color that your second resonance or your second formant is supplying, and the undervowel would be that part of the sound that the first formant is supplying.
I just want to go. I'm just going to pull that up for us. Is it the absolute spectral tone color? Is that what we're looking for?
Absolute spectral tone color will tell you where the colors of each frequency are. Right. And then there's a little brief explanation there on that one. This is all free downloadable stuff on my website. I believe it's going to be the chart below that one on that list that shows you, let's see, it's perception is just above it. Perception of absolute spectral tone colors. That one, I think. Let's
bring that up now.
It will look a little complicated, but really, the intended vowel is across the bottom, E, A, A. The overvowel is the top line, and the undervowel is the middle line.
Wow.
It tells you the two vowel components that comprise the vowels that you see along the bottom in our perception, if you're not hearing spectrally.
Yeah.
That's the sound.
Well, if those of you who are watching are like, whoa, we're out on the edge of the universe right now, then you're with me. That's how I'm feeling right now. This is very exciting, you know, understandings, and I think it would be wonderful to have Ian come and maybe talk us through that, you know, in coming time. Wow, that's fascinating. It really is.
Very useful, and yeah, I guess that's what I'd want to say about that. So a vowel is made of at least two colors. Of course, there's a singer's formant above that you probably talked about in the past. And the singer's formant is in the top octave of the piano, and that's all E. That's all E. So ring and projection is just E paint.
Well, that's interesting, because I was going to actually say a little bit earlier when we were talking about it, that when we talk about, generally in contemporary vocal, we'll talk about twang. And twang is often, in my studio, we often refer to it as a frequency enhancement of around about the 2,800 hertz. So, and that, it certainly comes off as an E vowel. That's
E.
Yeah.
From C5 on down is oo, just increasingly dark oo.
Yep.
And from C7 on up is E. Just increasingly bright, shrill E.
Right.
So the more there, the more just ringy quality you have, and in between, some of the other vowel colors live. So we're basically painting our sound out of vowel colors. In fact, you could say human perception of sound is just some combination of vowel colors. It doesn't matter what the sound is coming from. It doesn't have to be coming from a human. Once you start hearing that, birds have vowel colors. Everything has vowel colors. And there could be so many colors that you don't hear a single vowel dominating, but very often you do hear one vowel dominating the timbre, a vowel like color.
That's intense. I'm going to be chewing on this for weeks, if not months. I do want to just draw people's attention to where they can get what we've been looking at today. So this is Ken's website, which I've put a link to in the description section below. And if you go across to the Pedagogic resources, that's where we've been selecting, and they're all free to download. Ken's very generous in that regard, and it's given those tools for us to be able to review. You can see opportunity to order PVA there, and the second book, Kinesthetic Voice Pedagogy, which is terrific. Yeah, wow.
I recommend using the site that you cited for PVA because there was a really nice discount there.
So
And
that's that one there.
looks like there's no shipping charge, which is terrific.
Yeah.
That's the place to get that
So
one.
just so everyone understands, that is an affiliate link. So um, if you use the link below in the description section, you'll see the word affiliate next to it, and if you purchase Practical Vocal Acoustics through that link, I receive a small commission, not from Ken, but from Book Depository. So Ken gets all of his monies, hopefully, and I get a small thing from the markup or the additional amount that Book Depository get, and I use that and it goes through towards the channel here and those sorts of things. So just so we're all open about that. Yeah, so look, everyone should really get a hold of it, but be ready to take your time. This is not a coffee table book. This is you need to think while you read this.
Well, I do want to say that it's my mission in life. First of all, I'm a voice teacher. I'm not a scientist. I read the science and I apply it in the studio, but my mission is to be to just give as much science as you need to know to understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
We're not calculus. There will be no physics equations in my book. It's as user friendly as I can make it without distorting the information.
Yeah, I think
So
that the biggest challenge or the entry point is, and it may well simply be that my brain has been taught pedagogically to think, and we talked about this over breakfast, I think it was in Stockholm. My brain has been taught to think functionally, to think physiologically, the biology of it, and so I'm having to make a big paradigm leap over to understanding the voice acoustically more, in accordance with these new understandings that you're going about telling everyone, and yeah, it's exciting but challenging.
I'm going to throw out one more sort of fun tidbit that's curious, and these are just pedagogy things that I do in the studio. I was having a conversation last summer at the International Congress in Stockholm with Wolfgang Zaus, who is an overtone singer and a brilliant teacher of overtone singing. His student is sort of famous, is Anna Maria Hefele. You've probably seen videos of her demonstrating overtone singing. And while on the one hand, the entire vocal tract participates in the tuning of those two vowel formants, the first formant and the second formant. Like I mentioned, if you open your mouth more, that raises the first formant. But if you narrow your pharynx, that also raises the first formant. So the whole tube participates in them. Because of the way we were thinking about the historic progression of this, many of us thought, well, and I did, and I wrote this in my books thinking this way, that the pharynx is a little bit more first formant oriented and the mouth is a little bit more second formant oriented. And there is still truth to that, okay? There is truth to that. But I was having this conversation with Wolfgang and he said, oh no, I think of it just the opposite. I think of the first formant, the second formant in my pharynx and the first formant in my mouth. Well, I was depressed for about a day because I was thinking about it just the opposite. And but I began to play with that notion and combining it with some historic pedagogy. For example, the Italian school always claimed that the vowels are formed in the throat. And we know that they don't like a throaty sound. And I was a little bit puzzled by that because, words can mislead as well as lead us into the right. Well, as it turns out, all of those vowel tone colors that we mentioned, other than oo and o, come from the higher, brighter over vowel. And the over vowel is the second formant. So if the Italian was thinking all of those vowels are defined in the throat, the Italian was thinking that over vowel in the throat. So what I did, I think it's fair to say that it's a fairly universal percept to think of forward is bright and back is dark.
Yes, and I've started using very similar, you use the language of front room, back room.
Right.
Yeah.
And people think of forward is bright and back is dark. Play with the notion, and this is just a mental game because the whole resonator is involved in all of these things. Play with the mental game of having bright be in the back and dark is passively present towards the front. So, for example, and I'll show you why this can be useful. If you think of bright as in the front, it's very easy to misconstrue things. So if I think of E and I want to think E is bright to the front, I might go E, E. Well, actually, I killed my resonator setup doing that. If I think of the bright E in the back, E, E, E.
It helps the setup.
I get a better resonant balance.
Yeah.
Same thing with A. If I say A, if I want that, if I think of it in the front and I go A, now there are ways of thinking it in the front that work well.
Yes.
A lot of people instinctively will do that mouthy, reachy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of thinking it in the ringy in the back, not dark in the back, ringy in the back. A, yay, 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 yee. What tends to happen is I get my ringy over vowel percept in the vertical back room, and I get that sort of mixed vowel without my shaping it in the front.
That actually has some wonderful implications for studio teaching.
It does. It's been magic for a lot of students.
Yeah.
To play. You just have to be careful not to try to form the speech level shape of the complementary vowel.
Yeah.
I'll use the A vowel again. Well, the complementary vowel, the undervowel of the A, is technically but I do not shape It's built in to a good shape. A. If I go up in the range, the will increase in timbre on its own. Instead of
Yeah.
The A is built in. I make this joke in the southern United States, in the state of Georgia, for example. They start off an E vowel with that mixed undervowel. They say me. Instead of me, they say me.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Me. So both of those vowel colors are in there. Me. In the Midwest, they tend not to have the undervowel. It's more me.
Yeah,
but that's not a good.
We have two comedy characters here in Australia called Kath and Kim, and for those Aussies who are watching, they'll all know who I'm talking about. And Kath always says, "Look at my, Kimmy, look at my." Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. My head is buzzing. I've got so much. I'm going to watch this back. This video. I often do watch my guests back, but this one I'm going to have to, because you have given us so much today, and I've just seen the time. I literally have, the time has gotten away on me. It must be. What was it? Past midnight for you now.
Yes, it is.
You've been so generous with your time. I wonder whether we can answer one or two questions, simply because everyone does stick around to have a question answered. And so if we just take five minutes to answer some questions, and look, if you've been watching, stick around to hear the questions, because it may answer something you've been thinking during the chat today. So make sure you stick around for the next, just another 5 minutes or so, and hopefully, not hopefully, Ken's going to be able to answer some questions for us. We'll come back in just a sec. Okay, so let me just bring up the questions here so I can. So Matt has asked, and Matt's one of our regular watchers here. I've heard so many people on YouTube comments who probably don't sing in their lower registers or pretend to know about the low voice, saying that vocal fry is not a valid vocal register. Is that true? Is vocal fry validly singing low notes, and do those people on YouTube have a point or not?
Well, first of all, vocal fry can be very healthily done, so it's not inherently damaging. If you stay, it's a kind of an extreme, register extreme, and if you talk there all the time, it isn't terribly appealing socially, and so people try to coach people not to speak there too long, but it's possible to do it easily and healthily, and it is in that sense a kind of a vocal register. Is it legitimate low voice? That probably depends on how you're doing it, I suppose, and the genre a little bit. Generally speaking, in classical land, low basses are not resorting to vocal fry for those low notes. They're generally doing a very periodic oscillation down there. Vocal fry is a little bit of an odd duck in that regard, but it is a way to explore low notes. And sometimes, usually, if it's done well, the vocal folds are very relaxed. You're getting very good chord closure, so it can be used to help those two things. And some people can learn to access lower notes starting with vocal fry. So it isn't something that I use a lot, so I'll beg off a little bit. My answer might not be completely definitive, but I'm not afraid of vocal fry. It can be used. I just wouldn't. I don't rely on it heavily, but I'm not concerned about its use. And it is called mode 0.
Yeah.
Mode terminology. Vocal fry is mode 0.
Yeah, in the Thurman and Welch model, it's often referred to as pulse register.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pulse.
So that's good. Normally, I would add something in as well, guys, but because of time, we're just going to let Ken answer one more question. Is there any hopes for me finding resonance or my voice after traumatic brain injury, and how do I sing around allergies? Oh, okay, there's two questions there.
The first one is above my pay grade. That would, I would always try to be hopeful and work with people, because it depends on what was damaged and how that's affected your speech and everything. So I don't know enough to even wade in there. I do know that when people lose speech function, singing function can often be used to restore the speech function, because a different part of the brain organizes and manages the singing than does the speaking. But I don't really know enough about the person's situation but I'd always be hopeful. The brain is amazingly plastic, and often can find ways around to renegotiate certain functions. What was the other question?
The second part of the question was, which is a different question, how do I sing around allergies?
Oh, again, that's not primarily a voice acoustics question. And it depends very much on the circumstance. Allergies can swell the vocal folds. So they're going to impair the kinds of shapes that you can make as easily as when you're not having the allergies. But in general, my experience is the better your technical management of your healthy voice when you don't have the allergies, the better your ability to manage a degree of allergy with this, but it depends on how edematous your vocal folds are from the allergies.
Yes.
Usually people would try various medications to mitigate the effects of the allergy so that they come closer to the cover situation of a non-allergic voice. So that's, again, a little bit outside my,
And I would just simply add, turquoise skies, I've got a video on the channel that actually discusses singing with allergies, so I'd encourage you to go and have a look at that also, but it kind of just says what Ken just said. Okay, so I I think we should call. I think we need to let you go to bed. I think we need to bring today to an end. This has been awesome. It has lived up to my expectations, and I'm sure it's lived up to other people's as well. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
I do week-long seminars on this topic, so this is a little bit cramming a lot in a little bit of time, but hopefully it won't be hopefully it won't scare people away.
I'm sure it won't. I have a funny feeling there'll be a number of singing teachers, voice pedagogues from across the world that'll tune in and watch this beginning to end, because you've given us so much today, and I just want to say thank you before we just sign off, and I'll just do that right now. But that was amazing. This has gone much longer than I think we've ever done a live hangout with any guest, simply because it's such an in-depth topic, and Ken knows it so well, and I'm just thrilled that he was able to join us today, and so thankful, and perhaps we'll be able to have him again on the show again in the future, and I will follow up the suggestion by Ken to make the approach to Ian. I actually know Ian, so I'll make the approach to him and see whether he'd be keen to come onto the show in the future, because we've got other guests lined up in the meantime. But look, hit the thumbs up button. Take a moment to share this video with all of your singing friends. Look, it's not easy so this is not simple stuff, right? This is stuff you've got to really think through. I'm going to be thinking through it for the next at least months, if not years. It will be years, I could just tell. It's going to be a long time for me to really chew this and implement it into my teaching and my own voice, my own singing. But I'm sure we'll all be able to do that with a great sense of joy and excitement as we explore the voice even more so in the coming weeks and months together. I hope you've enjoyed the live hangout today. Make sure, if you're not subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the white bell icon so you always know when we're going live. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next Voice Essentials live hangout. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.